Dr. Dan Hale, Special Advisor to the President of Johns Hopkins Baby Medical Center, where I also serve as Director of the Congregational Depression Awareness Program. I'm pleased today to have the opportunity to talk with Ms. Amy Upton about a topic she and I are both very interested in, namely mental health. So first, thank you, Amy, for offering to be interviewed. And I'd like to start by having you tell me a little bit about yourself, your family, your work, and some of your interests.
Well, it's great to be here, Dan. I want to start by saying that I have been married for 37 years this year and have two wonderful children, a boy and a girl. And we've lived for the last 37 years a congressional family lifestyle. My husband's in the Congress, and so we have lived back and forth between Michigan and DC over the years. And my work currently is as Director of Adult Formation at a large Presbyterian church in Alexandria, Virginia. And that came about after many years working in the nonprofit arena for the National Society for Autistic Children, for the American Association of Homes for the Aging, among other things. But in my 50s, right when I turned 50, I felt called to go back to seminary and got a master's in divinity degree at Wesley Seminary in DC, and that's what brought me to my current position. So.
Great. Well, you have shared with me and others that you have a mental health condition. Can you tell me about that?
Yes, in my 20s, when I was a sophomore in college, I experienced my first depressive episode. Probably in hindsight, which tends to be a little 2020, I had had a breakup with my first boyfriend, and I had also been diagnosed with an autoimmune hemolytic anemia, which was sudden in my freshman year, and was being treated by high dosages of prednisone. And it was difficult in my 20s as time went on to determine, was I experiencing depression, or was I experiencing the ups and downs, the highs and lows of being on prednisone, which complicated my mental health diagnosis over time. I would masquerade my episodes of depression that would come and go, and as time went on, they got deeper, and the mania got higher. But I still felt like I was causing my depression. And because of, I think, stigma, I masqueraded it masterfully. And part of that was I had learned how to live on the highs and lows of prednisone. And so I had, perfected the ability to be around people and not have them be able to tell that I was depressed. So when my 40s came, those highs and lows got higher and lower. And there were times where I thought about taking my own life. There were times where I isolated, and I would drop my children off at school, and I would get into bed, and I would stay in bed until it was time to go pick them up at school, and continue to try to function in the world. But my bipolar was not diagnosed until my 50s. And eventually those highs and lows became, to a point where it was interrupting my ability to function. And I have been treated with lithium, which is an older drug. And I have been one of the people who has been very lucky, very fortunate that the lithium has controlled my bipolar 2, which is the lesser of the two bipolars, and have been able to function in the world with lithium.
Well, in addition to the lithium, are there things that you know you should be doing to sort of manage or control the bipolar?
You know, yes, I do try to eat better. I try to exercise more. I use mindfulness. My faith, did help me as I went through prior to diagnosis. Um, just believing in something greater than myself, and did inform, my suicidal thoughts and ideation, um, were helped by my belief that my life um, was important enough to not take my own life. That had really been taught to me by my Catholic upbringing. So.
Thank you. Well, I'm especially curious about your decision to be open with others. First, was there a period where you did not share with others, and then at some point you made the decision to share with others, and what has been the response, and particularly from those in your church?
So the response has been varied. I think I waited quite a time after I began treatment before I did share with anybody about my episodes of depression. I, for one, didn't have the words and didn't have the confidence because of it being up and down for so long to be able to talk about it. And then as I began to share with close friends at first, the reaction was mixed. Some people, were shocked. Some people were very uncomfortable. Some people couldn't believe it because I had masqueraded so well. And then I began to think about, I had always been involved with church and with my faith. And when my daughter, who in her 30s was diagnosed with obsessive compulsive disorder, a pretty severe case of OCD, and had been hospitalized and has gone through 7 years of treatment, I began to realize it was important to start speaking up about this in our faith community. Our daughter had tried, she really needed help. We knew she needed help, and she had agreed to go talk to a pastor at a church that we had belonged to. And the pastor refused to meet with her, even though it was the one person who she felt like she could talk with. And I think that was one of the catalysts. The other is when I was sick, the last person I would have shared my depression diagnosis with was the pastor. And I began to ponder that and wonder about that. And when I went to seminary and then came out and was a chaplain at a hospital in Virginia for a couple of years, I had gotten to a place myself where I wanted to speak more about mental health challenges and learn more about other people's challenges. And so I began, when I worked at Westminster, to very slowly hold programs, small groups about mental health, offer sporadic opportunities for people to get together who were suffering from mental health and to talk about it. Then we began to have speakers come in and talk about adolescent depression and adult depression. And slowly we opened it up further and used one of our programs, the Dessert and Dialogue program, once a year to have speakers come in and talk about depression, and to have book reads on depression. We have, it was a gradual move for the church, and it has been quite successful. And people are beginning to talk about their mental health challenges in the church, which really had not in our church been something that that I could see was happening. And I think we've all learned from each other, and the stigma is still there. Employers, you know, still present challenges with people who are on their staffs with mental health disorders. But I think we're making progress both in the church as well as out in the world.
All right, well, let me see if we can build on that a little bit. So, you know, what advice do you have for churches and other faith communities that are interested in being more welcoming and supportive of those affected by mental illness, both individuals and their families? What would you say to those who recognize the church should be doing more?
I think there's so many things churches can choose to do that fit their particular audience. All the way from, you know, having a resource list, much like the book that you wrote, Dan, in the back of your book, you know, available to give to people when they come to the pastors for help, all the way to, you know, having brochures in the racks that are around the church that people can just pick up and take with them. We've had some resources from the mental health organizations that are around, all the way to articles that people have read that they think would be helpful to people in the congregation. I think, you know, having the pastors in their pastoral prayers talk about mental health suffering and about, you know, the variety of ways that we can be present to people in our pews. When they, you know, have shown some of the symptoms of mental health disorders, to instead of feeling awkward and not bringing it up, to, you know, mention, gee, you seem not to be yourself today, or I've noticed that you've been missing in some of our classes and programs that you used to, you know, be frequently a part of. And I think there are, once you start talking about those things, I think you become a more sensitive and a more aware congregation. And it's a perfect venue to have experts come in and talk about these things.
I agree. I think all of those are excellent suggestions, and the fact to, you know, to have people step forward. Not everyone should. I think you and I agree to share their story, but there are those of us who can.
Yeah.
And if we can, that can help others. So I want to thank you for sharing your story today. This has been fascinating and very instructive. So I want to wish you well as you continue with this special mission you've adopted among many others. So again, thank you, Amy.